Hi guys, it's Holly here at Faces and welcome to episode 7 of the Face It podcast. Today I am here with Sarah Dillette, who is the CEO and founder of Esthete Genius, which just like Faces is an app and a software company. So welcome Sarah, it's really great to have you on and nice to have a fellow tech person on this week as well. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Holly. Thanks for having me on.
Oh,
Really appreciate it. I think everyone kind of knows when you're a tech startup, it's a lot of work in the beginning, and collaborating with others is really a great way to kind of get some exposure. So I appreciate you having me on today.
Oh no, I'm so pleased that you've come on today. So I'm first of all, I'm so excited to kind of tell everyone about what you guys do and the service that you provide because I think it's a fantastic idea. So we'll get into that. But also your background is you're an aesthetics nurse, aren't you? So that's I guess where your business then kind of started. So do you want to, before I start rambling, do you want to just go and tell us what you guys do? Because you probably got the the better kind of spiel in terms of describing what you do and also how you got into it. I think that'd be really great for everyone to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So what Esthete Genius is a downloadable app for the patients. So they go to the iOS store and they can play with different settings on their own face and have a preview into what filler may look like on them. And this gives them a little peace of mind and an understanding that, filler, it's not as scary as a lot of people think. And of course, we always recognize the really bad cases of too much filler or in the wrong areas or it's not balanced. And so they can play around with the settings, and the settings are limited to what you could do in one treatment. So it is a very soft approach, but it's a very balanced approach as well. Now, when they're on the app and once they feel comfortable with their settings, they can connect with the clinic. And they connect with the clinic, and the clinic gets notification that they would like a consultation. So the image renderings that they've created get sent to the clinic, and a little map is sent out of a seat recommendations. And this is a map of where to put those fillers in a way that creates a balanced approach. And it's really like creating a whiteboard for a consultation. So, the client has understanding that it's not, you may want cheeks, you may want to lift, but you can't stop there. You've got to connect the temples, and sometimes you need to do a little bit of chin or posterior
Yeah.
jaw to make it look that it all is cohesive. There's so many parts that happen when we start to age, and that it's not just we might see the volume loss in the cheek, but there are other areas that are also starting to age. And, a lot of patients, there's one area that they end up fixating on, be it tear troughs, be it the smoker's lines, sometimes it's the smile lines
For
there.
me, it's the tear troughs. I'm so conscious about my under eyes. Like, so for me, it's that. So any other tear trough people who just hate their tear troughs, I do feel your pain because it's my little insecure area, I think.
Well, and I think when we speak to people, we look at their eyes and we look at their lips. And
Mm,
so those two areas are always the most common for, request of rejuvenation, because that's what we look at in other people. That's what we look at in ourselves. And, just to have that understanding that there is a process that can happen that, is a much natural result. I think where we started with injectables is
oh my gosh. 10 years ago, it was the biggest lips possible, wasn't it? And I think now I absolutely love how the aesthetics industry has developed in terms of skin boosters, that softer look, more, as you say, profile balancing. And I think it's great that clients on a whole are kind of starting to understand that as well, that actually, small amounts of filler can really have a huge impact on enhancing your natural features, preventing aging, as you say, and just giving you a more kind of, I don't know, like nicer profile, I guess, isn't it? But I think something that I picked up from when you were talking about what you guys do was you're kind of educating the client on profile balancing, and yes, you might want cheek filler, but maybe you might need a bit in your chin as well. So from a financial point of view, that's actually going to benefit the practitioner more, because it's going to make the client hopefully spend a bit more money as well. Is that right?
It is. When I launched the product, I launched it in my own clinic first, and I would give patients the app on my phone. It was still beta testing. And I would let them play with it. I was like, is this what you're looking for? And we'd play with the different settings, and I used it as a consultation tool. And it was the transaction of, or the go ahead with going ahead with the procedure was a lot quicker, but it also allowed me to explain what's going on in the back end. You may want cheeks, but we need to do this, this, and this as well. So from testing it in my own clinic, the upsell was 100 to 300% more.
Wow, amazing.
They were quicker to move ahead with the procedure because they then understood it. And my consultations went from 40 minutes down to 10 or 15 minutes.
Wow.
To me a tremendous amount of time, but it also built that rapport with the patient so much quicker.
Yeah, and I think in terms of kind of the terminology that you can use, and having the app send the practitioner everything through first, I guess it will give them a bit more confidence to actually talk about the profile balancing, talk about maybe areas which they'd recommend to that client, and therefore making them sound a bit more of like a experienced practitioner and maybe a bit more well-rounded. But I love the fact that you trialed that on your own patients, and you're like, well, everyone needs to have this in their clinic now because it clearly does work. So what was the kind of motive behind actually launching Esthetic Genius?
So I was in the injectable space before, and then I was recruited for a sales position, but I'm not a pushy salesperson. So how I sold my filler, my products, was like, oh, education is huge. I'll train you if you buy my filler. And it just snowballed. So the area I'm in Canada has the lowest population, and I'm over 3 provinces. So I have about a third of the country. And I was the number 3 rep in Canada. So the only 2 girls that beat me were downtown Toronto, which of course I just can't compete with that.
Yeah.
It's a big city. But it just did it on its own because people were so after that training. And I would go in and help them with consultations. And, I decided to step back and have more of a work-life balance, which I think I reversed that.
Now you've got the complete opposite, I'm sure.
But I was still getting calls from the clinics and asking for help on how to recommend. And, I've trained all over Canada and the US, and there is very few practitioners have the eye for it. And it's not that they don't have an eye for beauty. They do. They know what looks good. It's recommending in a way that balances and the patient can understand, and having that simple conversation with a patient, but knowing the back side and all the legal terminology, or not legal, medical terminology, and your anatomy and physiology. And sometimes as practitioners, we get carried away with how we're speaking because we're used to speaking to our colleagues. And if you have plastic surgeons, it's a high level kind of conversation in the medical field. But for a patient, it's very easy to get them to understand visually if you show them a picture.
Yes, I've never actually thought of it like that, because what a patient will see is on Instagram, for example, oh, cheek filler, lip filler, jaw filler. I want to look like this person. And it's not as simple as that, is it? And I absolutely love watching and speaking to practitioners who genuinely do have that eye for it, where they can just make these tiny little tweaks which make so much difference. And obviously that takes a lot of time to learn that. You're not gonna do a 3-day course in aesthetics and then know how to profile balance. It takes experience and years of kind of assessing so many faces to actually get that. So I think this is fantastic because it actually kind of quickens up that process, because the practitioner is actually going to learn as they're using the app as well, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. So it is great for new injectors to kind of get comfortable with how they're recommending, but it also acts as a second person validating what you want to recommend.
Yes.
So if the software is recommending this and the practitioner is recommending this, it's kind of
Right,
a
okay.
cohesive way to, explain it to the patient. And it's an understanding that we haven't had before. And the other part, we haven't had a product that allows the patient control of how they look.
Okay, because that's what I was going to ask as well. What if they're saying, okay, I want to look like this, and then it's just
I
not
have the right.
possible.
So they have to look at it on their own face, and we can all scroll through Instagram and be like, oh my God, I wish I looked like her. Oh, her nose is, like
Every
her
day,
lips.
that's me.
And so we can do that all day long, but that's not our own face. And so when we bring it back to what our proportions are and what works with our face, it's amazing how it's even changed. Some of my clients that like to go overboard, like the lip could never be big enough, you know, they want to get rid of every line, every movement on their face. And we all have patients like that. It actually stopped them from going too far. And that was really nice. So when I'm like, no more lip filler, like we're done, like there's no, I can't squeeze another little drop in there. I would give them the app and say, like, play with it, like take a look. And they would move the cursor to the right and they're like, oh my God, you're right. Like this doesn't look good
That's
anymore.
so true. So you're actually using it as a tool to educate the client, because I think, especially when it comes to body dysmorphia, and particularly lips and noses, I think are kind of areas which people are very kind of strict on in terms of like how they want it to look. You know, I'm sure you've come across, as you say, a lot of patients who in their head their lips are just not big, but actually they've had a lot of filler in and they are looking overfilled. So it actually, instead of them thinking that you're just not letting them have it, they're actually able to see it for their own eyes, which I
Yeah.
think is amazing. Because I think a lot of the time patients might think that their injector is being unfair, or just not the type of person to like doing big lips or something like that, but actually you're putting your client's safety and your own work before kind of the finance side of things, aren't you?
Yeah, and it really does. Like, even if I have injected someone where I'm like, I really don't recommend this. I don't think it's going to be in your, it's not going to be more beautifying.
Yeah.
We can always put more filler in. Like you can, back in the day when we started, we had Juvederm Ultra. That was our only product. And
Yes,
so
of
we used that
course.
for everything. And you just filled and filled and filled. And you put it straight to bone and you just kept filling until you got the look you were looking for. And so that's when we would put in a ton of product and the face wouldn't move properly. And you think of that with lips and you just keep going and going and going, but nothing else is taken into account. And when you see it in, the line of the eyes and the chin and, in proportion to the nose, you want to make sure it looks cohesive with the rest of the face.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the kind of main question that I've got, and I think probably other people will have as well who are listening, would be, okay, so what if the client kind of and the practitioner decides that, okay, this is what we're hoping for, but actually maybe they don't have the skill, or they don't create that look because they're maybe not the right
If
practitioner to do that. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm not trying to say they did a rubbish job, but yeah, I think obviously it comes down to the injector at the end of the day, doesn't it? In terms of actually being able to achieve that. So what's kind of your experience with that and Aesthetic Genius?
So a lot of the trainings that I did, when I was a rep were of a deep plane technique. So when I want to replicate bone, like chin, jawline, cheekbone, I'm using a firm filler. When I want to replicate soft tissue like medial cheek, temples, I'm actually using cannula. I use a ton of cannula in my practice, and that's really how it's created. It's on this deep plane technique for layering filler using your softer products. Now that is all laid out. It's mapped out. It's mapped out on a face for the practitioner of where to put the product. Recommendations of how much product would likely go in that area. And that's all based on 13 years experience. So the accuracy is pretty, like, you're getting pretty close. Like, of course, life is guaranteed, but the practitioner can adjust those settings. So if they come in with someone that has a very petite face, they might need a little less product. And if they come in with somebody that's quite tall, like over 6 feet or something like that, that may need to be adjusted as well. But for the most part, it's pretty bang on where to put the product, what type of product to use, and what layer of the skin to put it in. Now, it might be something that practitioners may want to seek out a little bit more education with how to do these layering techniques, but in my experience, it's so much easier. The result is so much better. It looks much more natural. When we look at what happens with the aging process and the hyaluronic acid that we lose, when we're doing medial cheek, and if we're putting that to bone, it's pushing that muscle forward. So what we see is a lot of odd movement because the muscle's in the forefront. Whereas if we put soft filler over top of the muscle and soften that muscle movement, we're seeing a softer approach, and the muscle's not in the forefront, it's behind, and it gets to move the filler around because it's acting like the subcutaneous fat that would be underneath the skin. So that's how it is structured for injection. There's tons of different ways to do injections. MD codes was, a thing a while ago. There's all kinds of techniques out there. In my experience, I find using cannula and replacing what we need to.
I feel like everything you've said, Sarah, just makes me want you to inject my face because I'm learning so much. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know this. So I feel like if I was a practitioner who maybe is quite newly qualified or not been in the industry too long and I'm listening to this, I would genuinely be thinking, oh my God, yes, I might need some extra training. However, this is actually going to really teach me a lot as well in terms of actually understanding the anatomy, where filler should be placed, and kind of guide me as to, what extra training I do need to get. So I think it's fantastic.
Well, thank you. And that was I really want this industry to be not a faux pas where people are scared of, telling, oh yeah, I had these injections done, and it's got a bad stigma at times. And so all I ever wanted to do was make it a positive stigma that, you can have these treatments done. You can go on with your normal life and nobody even know. And that's when I opened my practice back up to injecting. I did it all word of mouth. I barely did any advertising other than maybe the first couple months I was open. So all of my patients were word of mouth. And once they found out their friend had treatment done, they couldn't believe it. They're like, well, why do your results look different than what I've seen? Like, I don't get it. They look natural. Their face moves normally. And I've seen other ones and it's not like that. Like, what's the difference here? And all it is understanding what areas need to be augmented and with what product. Because if anything too firm is put in the wrong area, we go back in time to 15 years ago where it was very visible when people had filler.
Yeah, 100%. But I think at the time as well, people sort of wanted it to be obvious as well, didn't they? It was kind of like, oh, I've had my lips done. Like, it was literally the biggest lips possible. Like, this is when I was about 18. So I was sort of at the age, I guess, sort of 10 years ago when that was still a thing. It wasn't about the rejuvenating look and, looking kind of more youthful and brighter. It was just filler, get pumped full of filler, and that's going to sort your life out, basically. That's what everyone just seemed to think. Something I really wanted to ask, Sarah, was obviously you're based in Canada, so completely other end of the world to where we are here in the UK. How would you say the aesthetics market differs from the UK market in Canada? Because I mean, it's absolutely huge here in the UK, and we're only a tiny little island, and it's still worth over $3 billion here. So just tell us a bit more about that and what what you experience in terms of being a practitioner over there.
So some of my biggest downloads from the App Store are from the UK.
Oh,
US and UK. The US is a huge market for aesthetics. US is a big market for consuming anything.
yes.
Most companies go down there. One, the population is just huge. They have big landmass, all of that. So they account for over 40% of the filler market worldwide is the US.
Wow.
UK is
I didn't know
30,
that.
yeah, it's a huge.
Worldwide. Oh my gosh. Okay.
And then the UK is more in the forefront. People like to look perfect in the UK. Canada, for the most part, everyone's like very reserved and soft. And, I did this post about East Coast, West Coast in the US. West Coast and California, people like to know that, they've had filler, they've had treatments, they've had plastic surgery. Like, girls are getting their noses done for their 16th birthday and things like that. It
Yeah.
is huge there. And so, but in New York, it's the total opposite. It's very secretive. It's all like, you don't tell anyone what you're doing. You kind of go and get your treatments done and little tweakments, and nothing's too obvious. People like to look a little bit more natural there. California, they like the exaggerated or, more in the forefront Hollywood type look. Canada, if you do West and East, it's opposite. West Coast, very natural, very hippie, like.
Yeah, yeah.
um, and then in the East, in Toronto, the girls are very much like the UK. You want to shine. And I feel like when there's a big population, people want to stand out and they want to make sure that they're, being noticed when, they walk down the street or if they're out for dinner, they want to look their best. And it just depends on the area within the country that is really kind of pushing forward
Yeah,
the
because
trend.
it's all like kind of environmental, isn't it? So it's when you're around people who are having treatment or looking a certain way, naturally you are more likely to actually kind of do that yourself, aren't you? Whereas if I was brought up, in the middle of nowhere on like a farm, I probably wouldn't be interested in beauty and aesthetics. Maybe I
You,
would, maybe I wouldn't. I don't
you
know.
know, I'd be really surprised. Some of the submissions that I'm getting are from remote areas,
Okay.
and they are very interested in, being a part of the aesthetic industry.
Yeah, good.
And a lot of the submissions I'm getting are patients who have never had anything. They've never had Botox. They've never done something for themselves. And so this app is actually opening up a whole new demographic
Yeah.
of consumers that we've never had before.
Yeah.
And it's not through social media, it's through App Store browse. So
Oh my gosh. So people are actually searching to try find out what they will look like for reassurance. Amazing. I love that. So
so
guys, if you're struggling to build your client base, this is a new area that you can be hitting. It's people searching on the App Store. That's amazing. So what
well,
kind of phrases are people searching for?
sorry, what kind of
What kind of phrases are people searching for when they come
when
across the app then?
I'm not sure the phrases, but 38% of my downloads are just from App Store browse.
Oh my gosh.
Wild, right?
Yeah.
So it really opens up like, and this was explained to me a few years ago about, I was like, I know everybody. Like, we have a city of 1.5 million people, and how do I know everyone? I feel like I'm in a small town.
Yeah.
When you're in the same circle and you're doing the same things, you meet the same people. And think of that as aesthetics as well, right? You have your demographic of clients and you have their friends. But what about people who have never dabbled a toe into aesthetics? Where do they start? They don't know where to
Oh my
start.
gosh, it's like a minefield, isn't it?
You
Because
go
it's
into Instagram and it's even
yeah,
bigger than you field.
yeah,
And so it's really we're finding a client that's serious, that doesn't know where to start, but wants that look that looks natural. They want to be in control of it, and they want that peace of mind that they're not going to be oversold on something. They're getting the treatment they're looking for, and they're associating themselves with a practitioner that's aligned with what they want.
yeah. And it's that reassurance they need, isn't it? Because I think if I was someone who was maybe quite anxious about treatments, I've never had something before, I'd be thinking, well, there's about 500 people I've just seen on Instagram. What if I go for that one, but then I regret it and I should have gone for that one? You know, how do I know? Whereas this actually will make them feel way more comfortable in that decision. And obviously they're the ones who have made that first step by actually downloading the app as well. So by the time it comes to you, you know that they've kind of at least had a big think about what they want. They've had to play around with the app as well. And they're kind of set on their decision that they want to go ahead, which is amazing. I
And
think
it's
it's I think it's a great idea. I love it.
and it's really comforting when I see these submissions come through that are from someone that's never dabbled into aesthetics, because
Yes.
everyone wants to feel good at the end of the day. We all want to feel good about how we look. When we look good, we walk better, with more
Yeah,
confidence.
for sure.
That's so important. That's what aesthetics is for. We want people to feel good about themselves. And that's the main reason I created a C Genius was for the patient.
Yeah.
And then just bridging it over to the practitioner. So it's all aligned and, beneficial for everyone.
Yeah. Do you know what? That kind of ties in with a running theme, I guess, which comes into my podcast, which is I think everybody who I've spoken to has always said about putting the client first. And a lot of practitioners don't do that. Whereas, you created your business and your software putting the client first. And I think that is something that, really is quite telling with the success in the industry. You've got to don't just be thinking about the money, you've got to put them first always. And I'm constantly trying to drill into everyone that that's the case. With regards to kind of the next step for Estate Genius then, so are you thinking about doing toxins, skin boosters, other treatments, or are you just keeping it as dermal filler? Can you tell us a bit about what we can expect?
Absolutely. I'm in the kind of end stages of a skin analysis being incorporated into the clinic app. So that way, they can come in with filler in mind. And sometimes filler's not the place to start. Sometimes it's skin. And so they can do a skin analysis. And what the skin analysis will do is recommend skincare as well as laser treatments. And that's the first of its kind. So I'm in the process of building the AI in the back end for the laser treatments to recommend based on the skin analysis conditions that are in the forefront. And we got a little preview of it yesterday from my developer of, how far we've come with it. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. This is so what patients need. And really what I want a Seat Genius to be is the ultimate consultation tool so that patients have the understanding. Even when you go in for a laser consult, there's like, you can do an IPL, you can do this, you can do your photona, you can,
Yeah.
like the options are never ending. But when you can refine the options to their budget, the amount of downtime they can take, and what lasers you actually have, it will populate. And then again, your consultation is just so much faster and it's just a clearer understanding.
Oh my gosh. I can just imagine it now. You're just like, okay, like tell me what you need. Okay, this is what you're having. Like amazing. Like I just love that. And I think obviously Face is one of our main features, and I guess the first ever feature that was launched was the consultation forms. And I'm constantly, trying to educate practitioners on the importance of a thorough consultation with your client, making sure everything's filled in. And I think this, alongside a faces consultation form, will just be kind of the perfect match, to be honest, because you've got all of the information from your client that is needed, it's signed, that's going to safeguard your patient, and then you've also got kind of that more aesthetic side, which is a Seat Genius, where you're actually talking about the more aesthetic side of it, rather than kind of the important bits, I guess. So
Putting the goals in the forefront. It to me as a practitioner, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the patient wants and what their concern is. And it's for me to resolve that concern and in the best way possible. So if it is tear troughs, that's their biggest concern. Well, sometimes they need cheeks and tear trough, right? To make it all look nice and cohesive. And that's my job to step in. That's the first concern. Let's start there. But usually once you start in one area, then the other ones show up. It's like, oh, wait a minute, what happened here?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
but that's how the rapport and the relationship between the practitioner and the patient start. And that's where Seat Genius is. It's that starting point of making recommendations so that your patient is happy, they have the understanding, and you can build that relationship further.
Oh, amazing. 100%. It's all about the relationship building and taking them on that journey. And, I think it's so nice when, well, I'm not a practitioner myself, but I'm sure when you get a client through, and then, they end up spending, every 6 months with you, and you can just really tailor their needs to, especially if they're aging as well. I think that's great. What advice, Sarah, would you give to any practitioner who is kind of struggling to get started, maybe a bit anxious, struggling to build their client base? And this is a question I ask everybody when they come on the podcast, but obviously you're very experienced in what you do, and I'm sure you've made mistakes in the past whilst you've been learning. So tell us, what would your advice be?
If somebody's looking to if they're just starting out, education is huge. Get into as many education seminars as you can. You'll take little pearls from each one. You'll see which one works best for you. I've seen a full circle do 2 laps of techniques that, we did years and years ago, go back, go to do something else, come back around, getting all the information from other key opinion leaders is a great way to gather knowledge. If usually mentoring is kind of the best way, because you get to see when complications arise, what products maybe don't mix with other products, how to resolve migration or, complications in that way. You need a support team. So really kind of building an aesthetic, team behind you, or relationship with colleagues and things like that. But building just with your patients, the patient experience is huge. Having that understanding, if they can trust you, they will trust you with whatever you recommend. So how you kind of do that is take your time with them. And like, I know in my own practice, my favorite patient was a brand new patient that had never done any aesthetics. I would get so excited because I knew I could make them.
They're a blank canvas ready for you. And that you're going to be doing a good job and you're not having to correct anything. Love that.
You don't have to correct anything. You don't have to worry about what product was in there before, or if they've had a bad experience before. And so it's really just word of mouth worked the best for me. And sometimes, a little credit if they referred someone, that was very beneficial to grow. That was my most beneficial. But honestly, if you do what is ethical for the patient and give good results, it will just grow on its own.
Amazing. Oh, that's such amazing advice, Sarah. Absolutely love that. It's just so nice to have positive conversations within this industry, because there's so much negativity, and I think, you're fantastic. I think everybody should be getting just should be downloading the app and getting set up with yourself. So Sarah had very kindly given me a discount code so that anybody who's watching, obviously, hopefully you're all a Faces user as well, you can use this code to get 3 months at 50% off at Aesthetic Genius. Sarah, can you just explain how they can get the discount and where they need to go? But we'll put all the links in the bio anyway.
So any practitioner clinic can go to aestheticgenius.com. There's a little sign up button in the top right hand, and you just kind of go through the steps. I have it limited where I do need to enable the clinic so that I'm not sending patients to somebody's house or
Yeah,
some garage or something like that. I am still looking out for the patient.
Yeah.
So once it's enabled, you'll see a red bar. You just have to put your clinic location and credit card in, and you'll put the discount code in the Stripe prompt. And so that will give 50% off for the first 3 months. And now the membership is super reasonable. I had just changed my business model, in February, and I want to make it something that clinics will use regularly and not feel like it's a burden of a membership fee. So it is only $20 a month regularly. So you're getting it for $10 a month for 3 months. It's literally nothing, and it's a free download in the App Store. So
mate, that £10 is going to get you new clients. Like,
oh yeah,
that's like, that's a no-brainer. That's like 2 Starbucks. Like, go to Starbucks twice, when actually you might have a client who comes in for their nose, tear trough, cheeks, lips, and they become a repeat client as well, which is literally a no-brainer. So guys, for £10, you can be adding another string to your bow. You can be educating yourself using Aesthetic Genius. As I'm sure you've all heard, Sarah is amazing, absolutely knows what she's talking about. I want you to inject my face, Sarah, really do. I feel like it's perfect, which I've never even seen before. But no, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Cannot wait to see where Aesthetic Genius goes in the next year, and really looking forward to speaking to all our practitioners about their experience with it as well once they start using it. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Holly. I appreciate your time today, and thanks for sharing my software with your
I know, software, aesthetic software. I think, as you kind of pointed out at the beginning of the chat, the highs and lows of a startup, it's tough at times, but I think as long as you're passionate about what you do, and I mean, Ash and Ben say that I'm more passionate than they are about faces, and I'm not even a practitioner. So I think it's good to make friends in the industry, isn't it, as you say as well. So but yeah, thank you so much, guys. I'll put the information in the bio, and you can then get signed up to Aesthetic Genius and get the discount as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Sarah, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks again.